I was involved in setting up the Internet Exchange Point in Kenya. And at the time, I was a young engineer working for an internet service provider called Swift Kenya. And because of the monopoly that existed and a couple of incidents that led to outages in the country, there was interest from the ISPs that were in operation then to set up a national exchange point where we could exchange local traffic so that at least that part of the internet could continue working despite the outages that were experienced when we were going through the incumbents. Africa has a very unique history when it comes to the internet in that we have traditionally bought services from other networks. So our networks have actually been designed to be smaller parts of other people's networks as opposed to being independent networks. And by virtue of that, a lot of our traffic is routed statically as opposed to being dynamic. For you to interconnect at an exchange point, you need to redesign your network. You need to redesign your network so that it's more dynamic in how it operates. It becomes independent as an autonomous network as opposed to being a small network of somebody else's network. Only once they have been able to get those resources and make their network autonomous can they benefit from an exchange point where they interconnect with others within that community. The most important aspect, and I think this is something that many network operators in Africa have not been able to fully implement, is the understanding of what is the benefit of exchange points. And in fact, the key word here is exchange points are good, but it's the concept that exchange points that bring that is really important. And the concept they bring is peering, which is basically one of the two key things that make the internet work. Service providers in Africa don't actually have somebody who looks at this key part of their business. I have talked to quite a number of operators in Africa, and they do not have somebody who is referred to as a peering coordinator or somebody who actually looks at the peering aspects of the business. An end user will pay you to deliver your traffic whichever way is most efficient for you. Now, you may choose to deliver it through transit, and you may choose to deliver it through peering. Peering is more economically sustainable and scalable for you as an operator. It affects your bottom line. So the more peering coordinators you have in the region, the better it is. The exchange point does have an impact in the business community, and the way to see an exchange point is that it triggers an ecosystem. So that particular ecosystem is the one that really benefits from the existence of an exchange point. We did a study to see the economic benefit of this exchange point. So some of the beneficiaries are like mobile operators. Mobile operators charge based on use or per megabit. And so every megabit you consume, you pay a certain amount of money. Now, if your exchange point has a lot of traffic, the content providers are there, you have traffic to other networks that their users are trying to reach to. And remember, the mobile operators are providing 3G services, so the mobile devices that are trying to access content. Some of this content, if it's reachable through the exchange point, basically what that means is the end user is paying per megabit, but not all the traffic that they are paying for is actually going through the international circuit. Some of it is actually being delivered to the exchange point. And when we did a study on the impact of internet exchange points at the Internet Society in 2012, we actually saw that some networks have as much as 20% of their traffic going through the internet exchange point in Kenya. And 20%, if you calculate that in per megabit per second, came up to a substantial amount of, if you will, cost savings that this operator was able to make by just sending their traffic, 20% of their traffic to the local internet exchange point. 1,500 engineers have been trained by AFNOG. AFRINIC has done equally about 1,500, 1,700. And with core competencies in key areas of internet infrastructure and services. Essentially, the exchange point in itself doesn't do much. It just moves internet traffic from one point to the other. The information that it uses to forward that internet traffic from one point to the other is actually provided for by the ISPs, or the members who are connected to that internet exchange point. And if they don't have the knowledge or the technical knowledge to be able to set up their networks so that they maximize or efficiently move the traffic through that facility, then basically an exchange point can exist but be very inefficient. So the capacity building that's brought enables the ISPs to actually maximize and better use this facility or learn the benefits of this facility. And then the next part, which is really important, is how to build services that depend or that can actually utilize this internet exchange point, like hosting. And we've seen here in Africa, hosting is not a well-developed service. A lot of people tend to host abroad, but with more training on both the technical and the business side, we've seen this grow. A number of countries have actually now started to benefit from the exchange point because there's more local hosting that's taking place. South Africa is a good example. Kenya is a good example. Nigeria is growing in that path. Ghana as well is a very good example where there's local hosting taking place. The service providers understand the business and the economics and the technical service, how it needs to be deployed in a scalable and sustainable manner. And that way it makes it possible to grow local content within a country. So in itself, an exchange point doesn't do so much other than ensure that there's a platform where all these services can actually come and interconnect, or the service providers can interconnect and provide these services to the people who actually want to access those services locally. Kenya has sort of like the history of what to do and what not to do when building an exchange point. So let me see where to start. I think the first and foremost, the unforeseen challenge that we did not see is the response from the regulator and the incumbent. But what we did not expect is that it will lead to closure. And there you are at home sitting watching news and you see the exchange point being shut down by the regulator. That we had not foreseen. That was clearly the highlight of unforeseen. Secondly, we also had not seen the potential for the resistance we got from a social engineering point of view in terms of making people understand the value and benefit of the exchange point. That in itself, especially for the incumbent, that was a bit of a challenge. We've had other challenges. Of course, the trust issue is a big. So having to go to a neutral location, which was neutral to everybody, and unfortunately we don't have. There are very few countries in Africa where you find a carrier-neutral data center. Now, back in 2001, 2001, there were no carrier-neutral data centers. So finding a neutral location was a challenge for all of us. So we had to take an existing building and turn a room into an office space, basically into a server room, and find proximity to where we could actually get access to infrastructure in terms of terrestrial copper circuits, so that we can use that for E1 circuits. So that in itself was unforeseen. One of the challenge was adopting new members that were non-traditional ISPs into the exchange point, and the existing members felt that the exchange point is just for service providers and not others, and we had to go through a process, and at that point the feeling amongst those who well understood the benefits of having even non-traditional members connecting to the exchange point was that this is good for the exchange point, it's good for the internet, it's good for the community, while there were those who felt like they should be customers of the ISPs, and therefore the ISP should deliver their content into the exchange point. But in looking at the broader picture in terms of growing the ecosystem, then internet is about both the eyeballs who are carried by, or the end users who are carried by the service providers, and the content providers who bring content. So it's a mix of both. Research and education networks bring both content and eyeballs, and equally you have content providers who bring the content in itself, and then you have the service providers who bring the end users, and to a very small degree some bit of content. So all those players are the ones that actually engage and participate at an exchange point. So leaving it to be exclusively a place where internet service providers connect is sort of like putting eyeballs with eyeballs, and so you don't grow the opportunity to actually benefit by growing traffic, because traffic for end users is targeting content, and content are targeting end users, so you need to put them together. New exchange points that are starting up, there are a number of things that are very important. I think I will start with the very first one, which is neutrality. But as you address the issue of neutrality, also address the fact that the location you identify to go into, you have to grow and scale in that location, because moving an exchange point is no mean feat. It's a huge task which involves a lot of planning, and also note that people will make investments into the facility, the location you agree to move to. Now, telling them, okay, you've made these huge investments of fiber, which costs a lot to put on the ground. Now, okay, we are done. We have to move to a new location. Then some of the infrastructure providers who've made that investment may not be so pleased having had to invest so much in one location then move to another. It is important to have a structure, because the structure will enable any small or upcoming exchange point to be able to grow. One of the questions I've seen many exchange points trying to deal with is, how do we grow our exchange point? We are small, we've just started. How do we grow our traffic? How do we grow our membership? And one of the things I've seen, especially in my work here in Africa, is that just saying we have an exchange point is not good enough. We are a social community. We are very social. We like to engage, and we like to listen. Sending somebody to knock on people's doors and say, hey, I'm from the exchange point, and I'm wondering why you're not connected to the exchange point, creates a better opportunity to actually get even those players who have not really given it a serious thought to actually consider joining the exchange point. And the countries that have actually made that attempt are the large exchange points that we are seeing. So if you look at South Africa, you look at Kenya, you look at Nigeria, you look at Egypt, in addition to having that environment that is vibrant, they've actually had responsible people for the exchange point go out knocking doors of the operators that exist, or potential non-members, non-traditional members rather, knocking on their doors to say, hey, we have this thing called the exchange point, and this is how you stand to benefit by being a member. And that does bring on new members to the exchange point, which in turn grows the traffic and the membership. If there's a business model behind it, it means there's more resources to continue to do more for the community. You need to be able to engage all stakeholders. The structure of the exchange point will need to be able to accommodate the non-traditional members or non-traditional ISPs into the exchange point. They need to be accommodated. So you need to have a structure that's flexible enough to accept new types of members other than ISPs. the decisions that at the exchange point are done in a collaborative manner, and the key thing is that there should be a decision-making organ that is responsible and responsible for making those decisions as to the way forward with the exchange point, how it grows, and assigning those responsibilities to individuals, either in a voluntary capacity, or if there is a business model to support, then the staff are hired to actually execute those responsibilities and tasks. Another very important aspect of starting small is because it's possible to actually get equipment donated from the community. And there are lots of groups and individuals within the community who are willing to contribute to the small startup. So if you're looking, for instance, for a switch, one of the members of the exchange point, or even other organizations within the community, will be happy to contribute to the switch, to give you a switch. If you're looking for rack, it's possible to approach an organization that can actually donate the racks. And all sorts of hardware that may be required, it's very easy for you to get that donated by the community. It was difficult for us to find, we did not have the financial model to support hiring a full-time secretariat. So what we started with was we went out and found interns from the university. So students, fresh graduates out of school looking for 3 months to 6 months internship period to build their technical competence and work experience. And we hired them because they don't ask for much. They're just looking for work experience. And we said, this is how it works. So you sit here, we'll call you from time to time, and this is some of the things you can learn with. And I have to say that the first 2 interns we started with, finally when the business model picked up, ended up being the first staff of the exchange point. And as time went by, we've been able to hire others. Over the years, it's become very apparent that of the time allocated to build an exchange point, 80% of that time is spent on what we call social engineering, and only 20% of that is spent on the actual technical engineering. And so my definition of social engineering is getting people to sit down and agree on setting up this exchange point socially. So you have to build the exchange point socially before you actually build it technically. The people who need to make the decision about interconnecting need to understand that in interconnecting with your competitor, it does not mean you're giving away or exposing yourself to losing out to your competitor. And that in itself it's an engineering process to actually get these decision makers to actually agree to interconnect. Once you overcome that, once they can sit in a room and build an exchange point socially, then you can easily move to the next step, which is building it technically, because it's a facility that everybody feels they're a part of because they're contributing in one way or the other. And that ownership is what makes it successful.